Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back to Real Opinions, and it's time for another Marvel film, because it's the peak time to release one of these for market share, or whatever other cynical thing that I can say at this point in time regarding the series. This isn't going to be the kind of review where I'm just fawning over every single character line or everything like that, but at the same time, I'm not just repping into it for the sake of being, like, anti-franchise or anti-superheroes in particular. I was quite looking forward to this one, just because it seemed like, again, they were just taking Marvel in a bit more of a different direction. Like, they had the colourful colour schemes with Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, but this has kind of introduced a bit more of a, like, the retro theme, and it was very bright, as in it was focused on the colour. Guardians of the Galaxy is just colourful because it's to kind of match the fact that it's a weird environment, but Thor is taking something that was already established as something as, besides like the Rainbow Bridge, which wasn't much of a aspect of the original, it's just really taking it and just dialing it up to a whole other level, and so I was interested with that. I liked the director, Taika Waititi. He does What We Do in the Shadows, which was very funny, Hunt for the Wilder People, which was very funny, and with a lot of my enjoyment of these Marvel films now actually just coming from the comedy more than the action, I think that was a good sign going forward. And lastly, it was the inclusion of Hulk, just because it was the idea of it kind of being like a buddy cop film, which how some people kind of talked about it before release, as well as the fact that I hear a lot of praise for the kind of Planet Hulk series, which this seemed like it was trying to incorporate in the best way that it could legally. And so it was interesting trying the idea of incorporating two heroes working together for one film, which is a point that I'll get into later on. But if you've listened to reviews in the past from me, you know, like I said right from the beginning, I'm quite cynical with a lot of these things, but I will posit it as a litmus test. I think it's the best Thor film produced. I'd say it's one of the better Marvel films recently released, but I would say that I think out of the Hunt for the Wilder People, What We Do in the Shadows, now Thor Ragnarok, I'd say it was my least favourite Taika Waititi film out of those three. Out of the ones that I remember recently releasing, this is definitely better for me than Spider-Man Homecoming or Doctor Strange. Like, it's just a tiny bit less generic than those ones. And I would say that it's on relatively equal footing with Guardians too, but at least I felt like with that, it did something different. Well, different makes it sound like it's something completely unique. It gave it a more emotional villain, which I really appreciated, because they never really do with the Marvel films much. They don't really focus much on the villain. But for that, I found the comedy was rather strange and the plot was a bit all over the place. In this case, I'd say in some parts the comedy was much better than in Guardians or any of those other three that I mentioned, but it still fell into the generic traps of a Marvel plot. So, characters. Thor, I think that they continue improving his character. Well, he was funny in the first one, and they've kind of developed him into the lovable dope character. I'd kind of describe him from this one now as kind of the Joey of the Avengers, and not in a, like, he still has positive moments where he's intelligent, but it's a lot of the time, for a lot of the comedy, he plays as the dope character, and it plays off well because it makes him more likable than someone that's just high and mighty and above everyone else, which is how, like, Captain America kind of comes off at times. And I think that his action sequences, in a lot of ways, in this one, felt like an improvement on what was done before. I think they utilised the hammer in very interesting ways, and I think that his action sequences, in a lot of ways, in this one, felt like an improvement on what was done before. I think they utilised the hammer in very interesting ways, and I think that later inclusions to the way that he fights, it just makes him a bit more interesting than he was before, and so, yeah, it's an improvement on, I think, pretty much all grounds for Thor. Tessa Thompson, who I just realised why I was struggling to name her, is because her character doesn't actually have a name. It's not given one throughout the entire film. But she is actually, I would say that she's the best female character in the Marvel universe now. You could say that's not really, that's not beating a necessarily high bar, but I think that she is the best character, the female character that they've introduced so far, just in the sense that they've given her more of a backstory, or at least more of an understandable and emotional backstory than the very small selection of other female characters in the Marvel series. But again, she's a higher bar. She beats the low bar that's been set so far. Hulk, I found disappointing, just from the sheer quantity of his character, as well as occasional moments where it just, I feel like they've almost changed his design. I don't know really how to word it, but in the first Avengers, he seems very bulky and just quite, it seems weird to say rugged, like I've almost got It feels weird to say rugged, but that's kind of how I described him. Like, he almost had, like, for some reason I seem to remember him, like, almost stubbly, like, he seemed a lot more crazed. And for this one, he seems almost, like, leaner. Strangely, he just feels less powerful in this one, even though he is beat up in the first Avengers, and I can't remember if in the second one. This one, he feels significantly weaker than I feel like the Hulk should. And then, like I said, he doesn't play as much a part in the story as I felt like I was getting from the promotional material and from, like, all the talk of it being a buddy cop space thing or whatever, which it just isn't. It just isn't. And sort of how I talked about Thor being almost like the Joey character, Hulk is also sort of a Joey character, but, like, in a dumber way. And I don't know, I felt like they were kind of setting up for him being a lot of the laughs, but to be honest, Thor got the majority of the laughs, and I felt like Hulk was just kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was more like they included him in the story because they knew people liked Planet Hulk, and so that was a good way to tie it all in, and it was a great way to kind of tie up the plot thread that they established at the end of Avengers 2, where he's in the plane. It just felt like he was included in that film for that reason, because after that big first fight that you see in the trailer, he really doesn't feel like he does that much. And which is a shame, because I genuinely, for some reason, I really quite like the Hulk character. I just find him interesting. Like, the Jekyll and Hyde thing has been done to death, but it's a fun way of doing it. Another character that I kind of felt sort of fell into a similar category was actually Jeff Goldblum's character, the Grand Master. I never expected him to be, like, the main villain or anything like that, which was obviously Cate Blanchett, Hela. But from the way he was marketed as well, I felt like he was going to have a more significant part, or just more screen time, and he just didn't. I didn't get enough that I would say I was satisfied with the amount of the character. I think the character's, like, idea and the premise of it was fun and enjoyable, but I never felt like he got time to really shine. Hela, there's not much to talk about with her character. She's a general villain. I'm the goddess of death, I want to kill everything. It's a Marvel villain, there you go. Thankfully, she has a very small part in it, actually. Like, well, she is the final boss, as all of these Marvel films. But I feel like this film acknowledges the fact, because it is just, there's very little of her in the film until she needs to be in the film. And I liked that, because it just made her an adversary rather than a character that you were meant to care about or actually pay attention to. Like, it sounds like it's a backhanded compliment, I suppose it is, but the focus was the focus of Thor getting back to a place where he could fight her back, and it was never about her. And so I was fine with her character, and I thought as an adversary she was enjoyable to watch. Plot-wise, I actually found this to be one of the more interesting films from Marvel. Plot-wise, it was, I wouldn't say at any point it was completely unpredictable, but at the same time it didn't just follow through with their very standard formula, rinse and repeat. It was something, again, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a breath of fresh air or anything like that, or something rather over the top that I feel like a lot of critics will say. It's just a slightly different take. It was just slightly different to the norm. Not slightly different from blockbusters in general, but I think it was fun, and I think it was rather concise. It was a very straightforward plot, which I know, again, sounds like a backhanded compliment, but with films like I said, like the recent Spider-Man, where it just feels like a mess of 50 different elements that they wanted to cram in this film to make it as marketable as possible, and considering the fact that there are reshoots on this film it felt seamless between the reshoots. It was just, I will say the problem with that, though, is that, like I said, it was a fine plot, but the main problem, I think, was the pacing of it. It just felt like it was rushing through everything, every single moment. It didn't help the emotional moments, it didn't help the comedy moments especially, which I did say that stuff was funny. Stuff can be funny regardless of the timing, but as people know that like comedy, comedic timing is a massive part to, like, giving a joke that much of a push to make it that much funnier, and I felt like the pacing of the film was really going against it, even though someone might argue, oh, but they have, like, jokes where it kind of stops for a moment, like, which if you've seen a Taika Waititi film, or just a general, like, very dry comedy, you know the kind of jokes that I'm talking about, where it just kind of slows down for a moment, and the joke is enhanced by the fact that it's a very dry atmosphere. And even in moments where it tries to do that in this film, it's very much like, we've held a shot for 3 seconds. That's long. Now that joke's over. There are no long hold jokes in it, and that's not me criticizing it. It's the fact that there are attempts at long hold jokes, which I think could be even funnier if they held a tiny bit longer, and if it didn't feel so much as like, you could also argue, oh, but if all the rest of the film is fast paced, when it comes down to these moments, they feel much slower. But really, it doesn't. It just feels like someone's left a pause, like a very momentary pause, but just enough so that the joke, like, you get this was trying to be a dry joke, and then they just go right back into the action of all of it, and it just, again, it feels unnecessarily fast for the entire thing. And I don't know, I think it removed a lot of the quality of the director, Taika Waititi, because it felt like there was more to this film that was cut because they wanted to get to the next plot point faster. They wanted to get to the next cool thing faster. What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People are, I would not say they're glacial by any means, but they're properly paced comedy films. Almost every joke is slower than a lot of the jokes in Thor Ragnarok. Again, but that's not to say that there weren't moments where I laughed in this film, because I think that, again, it stands out among most of the recent ones, Marvel films, as being the funniest, I would say. But I just think that this pacing, I know, it never gave you a moment to stop and enjoy something. It was just like, and now we're on to the next thing, and now we're on to the next thing, just like all of the other Marvel films. And it was, maybe it's just because, again, it's been drilled into my head now, but it felt like the next installment in a really large budget TV franchise rather than a film. That's not to say that the production design wasn't really cool, like all the planet stuff was great, all the VFX were really good, there was a grand scale to it, but that doesn't stop it feeling like TV, like it's here's what's happening next time. And I think that also comes in part to the fact that they're trying to, even more now, they're being bogged down by the fact that it's a universe. It's being to the point where there are whole parts of this film where you just would not understand what is happening if you have not seen the prior stuff, and it just feels like it does with an American TV drama, where it's like, here's that character from all this time ago. Do you get it? Because we're bringing them back, and it's not an anti-sequel thing. It is just the fact that it feels like it's a continuum now. You're not going in for a single film anymore. And I know you could say that has been happening for a while, and it has been happening for a while, but I'd say that that feeling gets stronger and stronger with every single film that I see now from this franchise. Maybe less so for this than Spider-Man, which definitely felt just like a TV movie, but that feeling is here, and I thought I kind of just took this film as the feeling of, even when it's not introducing a new hero like Doctor Strange, or even when it's not trying to be small scale like Spider-Man, even when it's trying to go massive, it still feels like TV now. And I love TV, but it's not a blockbuster. But one point I do want to make regarding that is that I think this film confirms the trend that's going in the Marvel films, where they're trying to really gradually introduce darker themes into it to get to, the end goal of Avengers Infinity War. It's not really the end of it, but you get the point. The goal of Infinity War to be the darkest film. And we've been slowly edging that way for a while. It's not as noticeable as the jump between Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets to The Prisoner of Azkaban and so on, those jumps. But it's slowly becoming noticeable, they're slowly introducing more swearing. With Guardians 2 you had a lot of death. And it wasn't just, oh, this planet's being attacked, it was, you saw dead bodies in it. And this film goes darker. It's, I would never say to any point, oh, this film's dark, but it's noticeably, it's showing stuff that they would not have shown in the very early things. I think it is just because they're trying to aim for this final dark conclusion to the A-list celebrities that cost very much, that they're trying to kind of set up for people can die now. So with Guardians 2, it was introducing not only people are dying and people being shown dying, but characters can die now. And that definitely comes into Thor Ragnarok, and I think in a way that tidies up the plot, again, which sounds like a really backhanded, I keep saying that backhanded compliment, but it is in a way that I think that works with this film because it helps really sweep under the rug a lot of the previous Thor films, like some of the pieces of those, as well as aiding this film because of it. Like people being stabbed, which again you would not have seen in an earlier Marvel film where it's robots being shot at by a laser, so there's complete detachment. Thor Ragnarok, it was enjoyable, definitely. I had a fun time watching it. Do I feel like I need to watch it again? Not particularly. Again, that's how I felt with almost every Marvel film going for a while. I would watch it again over Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or, again, the new ones. When I say it's the worst Taika Waititi film that I've seen, it's not to say that I would say, oh, he's a bad director or, oh, he's sold out or whatever like that. It just feels like he's made something and then it's just been plastered over with corporate Marvel and everything like that. And it just, occasionally you get glimmers of it, like fun cameos that were really enjoyable. But yeah, it's not like I'm dismissing him now because of one film. Like it was, there was a lot of quality like this, and like I said, it was the best Thor film, I thought.